Hello, my name is Claudia Zucca. My speech today is called Speaking from the Margin, the Presence of the Body in Bill Niedjie's Story About Feeling. This paper explores extracts from the original Bill Niedjie's oral transposed narrative Story About Feeling, as well as visuals from the multidimensional performance-based installation, a short dramatized feature film adapted from his words, Story About Feeling. The aim of this paper is to explore what the presence of the body signifies in marginalized narratives and contexts. The first section of my talk discusses the use of multiple languages and language varieties. Niedjie's narrative shifts between different registers and different languages. I use the term translingual to refer to texts which use more than one language in specific interactive ways, emphasizing the dynamic, fluid, and generative qualities in texts, which cross cultural and linguistic borders and boundaries. In this regard, Niedjie's text uses Aboriginal Englishes, Pidgin, and Creole forms. This innovative text generates a new type of literary and artistic narrative, situated on the margins of dominant discourses, languages, and cultures. Yet, it is precisely this peripheral position which allows the text's voice to come to the fore. The slide 4 shows how examples of the way languages interact in dynamic ways in Niedjie's texts. This is the extract. In dream, he made that Womera, that way you see his clawfoot hanging down, other way. He was man, but we call him Gulaban, that flying fox now. As we can see, there is English, Creole, and Aboriginal languages in the same context, code mixing and switching at various points, creating a unique text. The second section of my talk discusses the importance of place. This discussion is relevant as place and body are viewed as intertwined in our Aboriginal context. Furthermore, this section also discusses the notion of cadence and what I refer to as presence. These terms help to elucidate what the notion of the body signifies in Aboriginal settings. The connection between all living things is part of an Aboriginal way of viewing the world and cosmos. According to Ashford et al., the concept of place in Aboriginal societies can be viewed as a tangible location of one's own dreaming, an extension of one's own being. Furthermore, place can also embody clan relationship and identity. Thus, place is felt to be a breathing, thinking, physical manifestation of land, a thread in the pattern of creation. Place is also implicated and rooted in the notion of presence. Dennis Lee uses the term cadence. This idea explores the concept of presence, of being both inside and outside the body, opening out and trying to get into words. I use the term presence to refer to the body's manifestation in oral, written, digital, and visual narratives. It conveys the way the body materializes into a tangible presence which encapsulates the experience of embodiment involving the sensory, visual, tactile, and kinesthetic spheres. In slide 5, we see an extract from Niedjie's story. This is what it says. Story, going with your body, feeling or out of your feeling, your own body. I feel in my feeling with the story. I think myself, I don't want to lose this story. You can listen careful and how you want to feel, because you might feel his body with the blood, water, feeling. This extract encapsulates the notion of cadence and presence. The speaker is both inside and outside the narrative, conversing with himself and about how it feels to have the story inside his body and how the story resembles his body, blood and water. The narrator gets into the words, into the feeling of the words he utters. Story about feeling highlights what is meant by writing the body, terms used by French feminists. But it is extended here in a translingual oral Aboriginal context, not only because it mentions the body, but because the body is central to the story. It is implicated in the story and is brought to the fore. The text is the body, and the body is in the text. The story is about the language of the body, what the body has to say, and how the body conveys the story. In this narrative, the body is no longer hidden or separated. It is there, or here, present, in sight. It has presence, cadence, and memory. Niedjie reconstructs a sense of connectedness and interconnectedness to the land through the body. Stockton suggests that the relationship to land is sometimes strikingly expressed by describing features of the land as part of one's body. In slide 6, as we shall see, he explores these features. He says, "You cut him a little bit. You got water coming out. That's his blood, same as your blood, so he alive. Because that tree he cutting, that's his feeling. If we chop him, that tree, might be bad headache or feel funny his body because he cutting it, our body." In this extract, land is envisioned as an extension and a continuation of the body. The land, like the body, is itself a felt presence. It has feelings, it bleeds, it is alive. The land becomes a language onto which other languages of the imagination, mind and body are mapped onto the life of the land, trees and earth. The next section explores aspects of nudity, the absent body and symbolic body, through the multimedia installation in which Niedjie himself collaborated. In slide 7, you can see his body envisioned. The presence of the body is clearly marked in this visual representation. Niedjie's oral narrative and installation represents a repositioning of the body in an Aboriginal context and a radical rewriting of ethnography from an Aboriginal viewpoint. It enables a deconstruction of the bias that has been created towards notions of the body, and especially the body constructed as other. In this context, the physical body is recovered and restored to its rightful place in its cultural settings and landscapes. Niedjie's nudity in this still representation can be read on many levels. On one hand, it represents a marker of identity, and on the other, it can be viewed as an act of defiance. In the following still image is a live representation of Niedjie's actual burial rite. The exhibit comprises commissioned Larakichi memorial poles, a traditional feudal platform, and a ceremonial bunkul transformed into high-tech viewing portals, offering pre-recorded and live material that the viewer is encouraged to interact with. In this slide, the body may be considered as absent. It has been covered up. It is no longer a breathing body, yet the image of the dead body still points to a presence of something that exists, has existed, but is now in the process of being undone. The body's absent here is still represented as a presence, not only in the physical sense, but on a deeper level of meaning. It thus takes on symbolic connotations and meaning. Dying and death are not the body's ending. The body may transcend, but it leaves a trace, a reminder. Furthermore, it returns to the earth by decomposition or ash, and even in its dying, the body is still connected to the earth. It is through representation and ritual that death comes to symbolize a communion with the earth and not complete annihilation. His burial rites also offer an understanding of the body in its cultural context. It offers a renewed awareness of the role of the body in indigenous cultures and narratives. Furthermore, it symbolizes a restorative process as a counter-narrative to the negative connotations of the body of the other in colonial discourse. The existence of the other is crucial in defining what is considered the norm. In this discourse, the colonized subject is located as primitive and wild, something that is other and different. This definitional system establishes binary oppositions and brings elements of difference to the fore. Other is also a crucial element in the construction of the self. Now, Niedjie's narrative highlights the negative effects of being positioned as other. Through Niedjie's narrative and installation, history can be revisited from an indigenous point of view. even if that position is marginal or from a disadvantaged position. This position becomes his greatest strength. It is precisely from this disadvantaged position that those from the margins can attempt to reclaim a space that allows their stifled and silenced bodies and voices to speak out against the hegemonic powers of forced assimilation and control in order to resist and reverse the process of silence, subjugation and humiliation. In doing so, Niedjie can finally speak with his own voice, in his language and on his own terms. The body in post-colonial studies is viewed as a crucial site for inscription and becomes a location of discursive control, construction and representation. Yet bodies are not only passive surfaces onto which cultures inscribe meaning. In this instance, the narrative and installation can also be actively involved in the process of inscription and representation and reverse or resist subjugation by going against cultural norms of Western civilization. The narrative does this by exploring the presence of the body, both in its absence and presence, in its nakedness and symbolizing meaning. Writing the Aboriginal body represents a retrieval of culture, history and memory. Thank you very much.